welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com.
What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk or anywhere you get your podcast. Make sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts. We're really trying to get the audio going, so give us a review. Whether you like us or not, we'll take the review. The Pittsburgh Steelers are 2-5. Things are looking glim. Kenny Pickett, don't know what to think about that there, but there's a lot to talk about. It's a gorgeous day here in the Burgh because, win or lose, the sun's always shining. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. Yeah, it's a nice day. Some hope around this team. I don't know. Like we talked about the Kenny stuff, and it's at the very least it's something to watch. I guess I don't know. They could have. This team could have been bad with no direction, and they're bad with a direction now. I think so. That's something, right?
That is definitely something. I like that you put it that way. They're bad with a direction. That's what it feels like. It feels like this team, we've said that. We've said that from the jump that this team was not going to be good this season. If you put Kenny Pickett in, it wasn't going to change anything. They were still not going to be good this season. But just like you said, now there's a direction. Now there's, okay, well, at least Kenny's showing some grit. He's making mistakes. Let him make the mistakes now while they're not good. And then maybe next season they'll be fine. I think that was my biggest takeaway is Kenny's bad right now. Kenny's not playing well, but I didn't expect him to play well. And I'd rather him play awful at this point in the season or at this point in his career than have waited it out with Mitch Trubisky. The Steelers finish with a losing record, and then you have to deal with 7 picks in 12 quarters next season from Kenny Pickett. Because then if people are calling for his job now, I couldn't even imagine what week 4 of next year would look like if this was his first 4 games.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easier to chalk everything up to kind of rookie making his first few starts and all that. And I wrote this last night, but let him take his licks now. Like this is as good as time any. And he's, I don't know, he wasn't always going to be the he wasn't always going to play the way he did against the Jets. He's not going to face the Jets every week. The competition got decidedly harder. And that's the other thing. He jumped in to this starting role during the Steelers' hardest stretch of the season.
Yep.
Like jumped in right in the middle of it. So you were already asking a lot of him. And I feel like he handled it about as well as you could logically ask any rookie to handle that. But these interceptions are starting to get a little concerning. And I thought last night was the first time he looked a little rattled, honestly, or a little intimidated by the speed of the game, by the environment that he was in. It was the first time I really thought he got like sped up by an opponent,
Yeah, I agree. But at the same time, the circumstance was much bigger than anything he's faced because he got thrown in there at halftime of the Jets game. You don't really have time to react whatsoever. You can't think about anything at all. Plus, you're getting tossed in there at halftime, so the momentum's on your side. You got the fan base behind you. The offense is flowing right from the jump. There's a lot of emotion there. You go to Buffalo, nobody expected you to play well in Buffalo, and that was a bad game. Like there was nothing that you could take away from that game and say this was a positive. There was nothing. Then there's Tampa Bay that you leave in the third quarter, and you looked okay in the first quarter, but Tampa Bay might stink, so we don't know anything. And then you head to primetime. So there was no build up to this. There was no, okay, it was a ton of emotion. Get your absolute butt handed to you in Buffalo on the road, suffer a concussion so you don't even get a full game to like recoup from Buffalo. You don't even get to feel that emotion of a win. And then you're tossed into primetime against a good Miami Dolphins team. And your offense looks exactly the same as it's looked. Like a lot of people are trying to put this solely on Kenny Pickett. And don't get me wrong, like you throw 3 interceptions, and especially that one at the end was god awful. But and quite frankly, the third down pass was god awful too. But you have to look at everything that happened around that. There's so much. The play calling, atrocious. Once again, if Matt Canada's job is got to be like that. It's people talk a lot about, oh, well, he's got to have a deal, or this guy's got to be holding something over this guy's head. We've hit the point where like Matt Canada's got to have some serious dirt on the Pittsburgh Steelers, because there's absolutely no reason. I don't care if you're a respect thing. I don't care if this is not what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. If you care about your football team, Matt Canada shouldn't have a job as of Monday afternoon. I don't even care. I'll go call plays. You call Ben Roethlisberger. Tell him to just design plays on the run. I don't care. It's better than Matt Canada. Najee Harris still isn't getting going. The offense dropped 3 interceptions. Like, there was a lot that went into that loss. It was way more than Kenny Pickett, but you're right. Like, he looked rattled. He looked like the game was faster than it needed to be. But quite frankly, I'd rather him look rattled right now when the team's 2-5 than at the beginning of next season. Like, I'm cool with the growing pains as a rookie. Let me ask this. I saw 2 completely ridiculous overreactions when it comes to Kenny Pickett. And one of them we've been hammering for months now. And that is, he's 24 years old. He shouldn't have these pains. He's 24 years old. You got to start him now. He's ready to start right now. Maybe it's just me, but when did the NFL suddenly decide that if you're over the age of 22 years old, you're good at football? Doesn't matter if you've ever played in this league or not. Because quite frankly, the number 24 doesn't matter to me. The only number that matters to me is 12. And that's the amount of quarters this kid's actually played in a football game.
Yeah, no, I feel the exact same way. Like, age. The only reason people are saying that is because age is usually associated with experience. And it's not. Yep. It's like not like, yeah, he's played a lot of college games. You know, he's been around. He's played a lot of football. He's not played a lot of NFL football. And those are 2 completely different things. So, yeah, that's a completely ridiculous way of looking at it. You could be 30 years old, but if you're playing your first year in the NFL, it's not going to go well.
No, it's not. And you played at Pitt. Like no offense to Pitt, the ACC is what the ACC is, but it's not like it's not like he faced NFL talent every weekend for 5 years. He faced a couple of really good teams for 5 years, won some really big games. But like, you think about his biggest moments, people want to say like, oh, well, you know, prime time shouldn't have affected him. You know, you should have saw his performance in the ACC championship game. He played Wake Forest. He played Wake Forest in the ACC. Tell me how many people from that Wake Forest team are now in the NFL making plays on Sunday Night Football. I bet you the number is pretty close to 0. And again, no hit on the ACC, but you know, there's nobody in college football that matches up to the Miami Dolphins. There's just
right.
There's
and
just
that's even at the best levels of college football. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You talk about how like low the percentage of people who make it to play college ball are, and then you shrink that down even more for the number of people who get to play professional ball. Like, again, even at the highest levels, even when it's Alabama versus Georgia, there are some of those guys that aren't going to sniff an NFL field. Starting in those.
What's
games.
the percentage? Yeah. It's like 1% of college athletes make it pro or
Yeah,
something.
which is already 1% of all the high school athletes.
Of the 3% of high school athletes that make it to college. Yeah, it's like it's ridiculous. So and then that's just to make it, let alone start a game for the Miami Dolphins on a defense that's pretty good. I mean, you got to look at their corners last night. Was that Noah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his last name.
The dude who got the last pick.
Yeah, that guy. He's a first round pick 3 years ago or something. Only got into the starting lineup because they were dealing with injuries at cornerback. Like, that's how good you have to be in the NFL. So anybody who uses he's got plenty of college experience, who cares? Who cares? He's got 12 quarters of experience with George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, Chase Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. 12 quarters of experience working with Matt Canada as his offensive coordinator. 12 quarters of experience behind a new offensive line. 12 quarters of experience playing NFL-style defenses, and then goes into prime time against one of the fastest teams in the NFL. I don't care. You could be 30 years old. That number means absolutely nothing to me. But people are tossing it out there like that's it. Like that's it. If he's 24 years old and he can't do it now, my gosh. I think the other side of that are the people that are now suddenly calling for this is over, tank for CJ Stroud. You know, maybe you put Mitch back in there, give Mason Rudolph a shot. There's all of those people. I saw the words "I'm done" with Kenny Pickett at least 100 times on social media last night. What were you expecting? Like, what was the expectation coming into this whole mess for a team that when he entered was 1-2, 1-3, and is now 2-5? Like, this wasn't an undefeated team and Kenny Pickett just made it really bad. This was a really bad team that added a rookie quarterback who's supposed to be really bad.
Yeah, no, the expectation was never that he would be the savior, and I think that's just that's a completely unrealistic expectation for a guy making his first few NFL starts against, again, like as brutal a schedule and a stretch as the Steelers had in front of them. You know, Tampa Bay wasn't as good as I think we all thought they were going to be, but still, that's like, that's just unrealistic expectations. And again, I think we've talked about this before, but just like it's something that Steelers fans do a lot, is that they kind of have that expectation to win constantly, win all the time, win at the same level that they have been. And the reality is that this is just not those teams that you've become accustomed to watching. This is just not one of them. And I guess this is unfamiliar territory, but you got to deal with it. This team's not very good, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Exactly. It is so frustrating to try to explain to people who have been spoiled. Like, don't get me wrong, I grew up a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. If I didn't have this career path and I wasn't in the situation I was in, I would probably be looking at this a totally different way than most people are. But the Steelers and Steelers fans have been spoiled beyond belief with the amount of success that they've had in the last 20 years. That's unheard of in the NFL. People don't do that. And to hold that standard and to say things like the standard is the standard, we shouldn't be no, the standard is the standard until your team is in rebuild mode, and then you're trying to rebuild back to the standard. In the last 5 years, you've lost 6 or 7 Pro Bowl guys, your entire offensive line. You've gone through 3 running backs. You have a brand new wide receiver core. You have a new quarterback. You just replaced your Hall of Fame quarterback. Your defense has lost the best player it's had in 20 years. Outside of that, there's only one guy on this defense who was here 5 years ago. This is rebuild mode for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a team that should stink, that should finish in the top 10 of the NFL draft and should carry on. And anybody who's looking at this going, well, Kenny Pickett should have saved this and blah, 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 you ignored every other problem with this team. Because think about it like this. Even if he didn't throw those interceptions, at worst, you're getting a field goal on the 3rd and 16. So you're going to 13-6, and maybe you score on that final drive. So you win 20-16. That might beat the Miami Dolphins on Sunday night, but that is not going to beat Josh Allen. That is not going to beat Patrick Mahomes. That's not going to beat Lamar Jackson. Chances are that's not going to beat the New York Jets this season. That's not going to beat so many Joe Burrow, who is now red hot. It's not going to beat probably Deshaun Watson once he gets going. Like, it's just, you're beating the Miami Dolphins. Cool, but it's a bad win. Like, that's a really, really bad win, in my opinion.
Yeah. It's just this, I don't know. This is just going to take work. This is going to take a long time. Like, you're so young, and like, I don't know. You don't build something like this overnight. You don't create a winner again out of nothing overnight. There are pieces there, but like, the standard is a nice thing for the players and the coaches to say to one another, but if you're a fan kind of attaching yourself to that mentality, you are setting yourself up for disappointment, and you're going to be upset at what this team gives you. So I would, for your own well-being, for your own like emotional well-being, watching this team every week, don't expect them to like to be the same team that you watched for the past 20 years, because they won't be that team.
They will not be that. They're not even going to be anywhere near that team. This is if you
And that's
continue
fine.
at 2-5, that's totally
And that's
fine.
That's fine. That's not the worst thing in the world to stink for a little bit, get some better talent, and then take another run at it. Like, that's not the worst thing in the world.
That's the thing. If the expectation is, oh well, we got to make it to the playoffs, you're never going to win a Super Bowl again, ever. If you take a couple years and stink, build a team around TJ Watt, around Minka Fitzpatrick, around Kenny Pickett, around Najee Harris, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, think about how good this team could be. Like, there are the building blocks in place. The problem is that there's 5 building blocks. One of them's on IR, and the most important one's on IR, and the other most important one's a rookie who's played 12 quarters of football. This team should stink. It's okay to stink, because if you stink now, you'll be good later. And people they have such a hard time getting that through their head. And you got to live with that, because if you could put up with it for 17 weeks of football, the return on that is so worth it for any team out there. And the Steelers aren't the only ones going through it. Think about the good teams in the NFL right now. The Bengals stunk for so long. The Jets finally turning it around, and feel bad for Breece Hall, but finally turning it around, looking like a good team. The Miami Dolphins have stunk for so long. Like, there's just so many teams out there that you're just like,
that embrace this process and like embrace like kind of natural ups and downs of like being in a professional sports league in the NFL. Like, that's the point of having a draft that's determined by, the worst team by record gets the first pick. Like, it's intentional. That's just how the league works, and you can't think you're above that.
Exactly. And with all the pieces that they need to finish in the top 10 of the draft this season would be a blessing. It would hurt Mike Tomlin's resume, but I do not care, because if you get a superstar to add to your list of growing superstars, you're on the right path, no doubt. All right, there were some good that I want to talk about from the game last night, plus the direction of this team, what our expectations were for the rest of it. But first, we got a word from our boys over at Manscaped. Welcome to Fresh Ball Fall. It's the season of pumpkin spice and making sure your crotch looks nice. That means sipping cider in a fall breeze and using Manscaped products to trim your balls with ease. That's right. Today's show is brought to you by Manscaped, a company here to make sure that your foliage isn't the only thing shedding its excess leaves. Heck, even Mother Nature knows it's time to lose the excess clutter for fall. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with our code STEELERS20. Whether you're brand new or already with us at Manscaped, you could use the crown jewel for your family jewels, the Platinum Package 4.0. With this glorious package, you could align your entire hygiene routine all in one swoop. Inside the 10-part Platinum Package is everything you know and love about the Performance Package, plus some shower goodies included to elevate your grooming game to platinum. The Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer and Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer feature proprietary advanced skin-safe technology to protect your delicate parts and holes. Both are waterproof, so you can keep scaping even as the weather's changing. In addition to shaving, you can now completely upgrade your shower routine with the Ultra Premium Body Wash and Ultra Premium 2-in-1 Shampoo and Conditioner. You'll have your skin and hair feeling hydrated and smelling fresh. Don't forget to apply their aluminum-free ultra premium deodorant, and don't worry, it's not pumpkin spice, it's a cologne quality fragrance. But we shouldn't have a signature scent just for our pits. Use the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner to make sure your go-to smell is top shelf and not sweaty balls. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Platinum Package 4.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag, both specially made to hold your goodies. Get the Platinum Package this fall. These products are guaranteed to be hits for your dangly bits. Go to manscaped.com and get 20% off plus free shipping with our code STEELERS20. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com when you use our code STEELERS20. Manscaped, clear out the leaves. It's your tree trunks. Time to shine. All right. Despite a loss, there is some good, and you could even look at Kenny Pickett as part of the good from the game in Miami. Not all good. I think that there's still some very glaring disappointments with this team, and I think that's highlighted by Matt Canada. The fact that, in my opinion, George Pickens was a positive in this game and should have been much more of a positive, but for some reason, he just disappeared in the third quarter, was nowhere to be found, and everything around that made me say George Pickens could be a dude who could have 100+ yard game consistently for weeks on end if the Steelers play him correctly. That was definitely a positive that I took away from that game.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. They need to find ways to get him some more big gains. Like you can't. It is hard to get him to that point that 100 yards a game kind of benchmark that I think he can reach on. He had 6 targets for I think 61 yards or whatever
Yeah, 61
yesterday.
yards and a touchdown.
You kind of need some more. It needs to be a little bit more explosive than that because you're not going to be able to target him 10 times a game reliably. That's just if you're zoning in on one guy that frequently, it's not gonna it's not gonna end well. People are gonna pick up on that pretty quickly. But yeah, no, Pickens absolutely was, and I think the biggest thing is the chemistry that he's developing with Kenny Pickett. That's in your ideal scenario in your head, those two are playing together for a long time. So to watch that connection grow really early is I think a really big positive as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And Deontay Johnson got involved. Pat Fryermuth got involved. Like there were parts of this offense that you felt very positive about, and then there were parts that you were like, "Oh man, what's going on?" And I think like there are other positives. Like I think Kenny Pickett showed poise on that last drive up until the interception. Like he looked like the game was moving faster than he could handle, but he looked like he was built to handle the situation. Like he
Mm.
looked as if, okay, look, I get that I am outmatched here, but I'm going to do what I can and I'm going to try to win this football game. I took that away as a good one for Kenny Pickett. I thought the defense played well overall. You come up with 3 interceptions. This is a totally different game. You got to get your hands on those, but maybe outside of Levi Wallace, I thought everybody looked good on the defense. They put pressure on Tua and they stopped 2 guys that they should not have stopped outside of, the fact that the middle of the field was ridiculous. But those halftime adjustments I thought were very good.
Yeah, at halftime, like second quarter adjustments, like they scored 13 of their 16 points in the first quarter. Yeah, this defense was going against a team that was miles more athletic than them, faster than them. But I give so much credit to the defensive coaching staff. They had their guys in position on just about every play.
Mm-hmm.
For the final 3 quarters. Like you said, those 3 dropped interceptions, like that's proof that everyone was where they needed to be. And if you complete the easiest part of those interceptions, which is just catching them with
Catching the
your
football.
hands, like getting in position is the hardest part of that. Like knowing where the ball is going to go and being able to step in front of it, that's the hardest part. Catching it is the easy part. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can look at that in 2 ways. You can either look at that as encouraging or look at that as discouraging, as though, like even when we're in position, we can't make those plays. But I took it as a positive. Like that's that those mistakes are fixable, and I was really impressed with how the defense played against a defense that they really had no business, or an offense that they had no business kind of going toe to toe with the way they did.
Yeah, I agree. Especially after the beginning. Like once you saw how explosive Miami's offense really was, you were like, oh, there's no way the Steelers defense is going to be able to compete with these guys. There's none because they're
Mhm.
not fast enough. Like the Steelers defense is the most unathletic group of human beings in the NFL, probably. That's just not how they're designed. But like you said, the halftime adjustments were real. I thought that they played well in that second half. I thought a lot of people played well in the second half overall. I just thought that the Steelers went into halftime and made the right adjustments. Again, outside of Matt Canada, I'm not going to give Matt Canada credit at all for anything that he does until he proves me wrong. But at this point, I'm so sold on the fact that this guy is just so outmatched by everybody in the NFL. It's ridiculous, and you just can't beat it. All right, maybe there's not a ton of positives, but I wanted to address some of them. before we head out of here, I want to talk about the direction of this team. They're 2-5. They got one game before the bye. I think we could both chalk up Philadelphia as an L. I just don't think that it's realistic to say they're going to beat the Eagles in Philadelphia, especially when Philadelphia is flying as high as they are right now. That city is on fire. I'm a little excited, but yet at the same time, extremely nervous about heading there next Sunday. I got a brother and a sister that live out there, and both of them called me last night, and they're like, dude, this place is insane. And I was like, yes, please be careful. Don't do anything that don't be climbing poles. No need to be climbing poles. After that, they head to the bye. Then they enter a much easier part of their schedule. Do you see at any point that this becomes a turnaround, or is there a very low ceiling on the Pittsburgh Steelers somewhere around 5-6 wins?
Yeah, I think there's a low ceiling. I think they'll be much more competitive over these last, the second half of the year. No one on that. I'm looking at the schedule right now. No one on it is unbeatable. After the bye, like there's no one that they will be decidedly overmatched by. You could maybe say Cincinnati, just given the way they're playing right now. They don't look like the same team that they played in week 1. But yeah, there's 2, 3, 4 more wins on that schedule, maybe.
Yeah.
It's not
3.
It's going to be a much more entertaining half of the year. And I think a little bit more encouraging. I think this is where you kind of hit the point where you're looking for from your rookies, from your young guys, from this team that you're kind of handing the keys over to the youth movement a little bit. And I think the second half of the year is when you're going to start to see the potential really materialize in a win or two, as opposed to just a good half or a good quarter or a good 3 quarters or something like that. You are going to see a few, at least. I can't, say for sure how many, but some better full game efforts that can result in a W.
Yeah, I agree. You look at the Saints, a possible win, the Colts, a possible win, the Falcons, a possible win, the Panthers, the Raiders, maybe a Cleveland game. Depending on how Deshaun Watson steps in here. But you're right. There's definitely upside to the season. I just don't. What's too much upside? Like, what do you? What do the Steelers have to do before you're like, man, you pushed it too far. Now you're picking 13th, 14th. Your pick's pretty much just an average guy again. And, you had a real opportunity to get a superstar. Like, where is that bar? Because in my head, it's 6 wins. If you go over 6 wins and you finish the season like 7-9, you're right in the middle of the pack, especially this season. And you're in my head, that's a wasted year. Like, you stunk for no reason whatsoever. You might as well just win 5 games and get the 7th, 8th pick in the draft.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of the same thing. They have 2 wins right now, and I see kind of 3 more that, New Orleans, Atlanta, Carolina seem like those 3 that you should really go after. Anything beyond that seems, again, not useless. Winning is never useless, but I feel like you'd rather have a pick, have a higher pick than go 8-8, 8-9 or whatever.
Yeah.
You'd rather pushing for the playoffs at this point. I don't think that should be their priority.
Nope. And it's going to be their priority. They're never going to walk into a game, just like no one should ever walk into a game saying, man, I hope we lose. But from the outside perspective, you should be looking at this going, every loss is a win from here on out. Get as close to that first pick as humanly possible. Add some really top tier talent through the draft. Because if you have a top 10 pick, you're not just getting a quality guy in the first round. You're getting a quality guy in the second round, and then you're getting a pretty good guy in the third round. And then by the 4th round, you're pretty much still in the 3rd round. So you could get one of those stragglers. That's 4 quality picks for the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you pick 15th, by the time you're around that 3rd round, you're looking at the total other way. You're like, well, at that point, you're like almost in the 4th round. You're getting 2 guys. The second guy isn't as good as what it could have been. Like Nick Chubb's a 2nd round pick, an early 2nd round pick, but a 2nd round pick. Like you could come up with a guy like that. you're not always going to find a George Pickens at 52. So I think that you have to look at it like, man, if they can land a top 10 pick, and nobody wants to hear that, everybody's going to get real mad at us talking about this. But if you could land a top 10 pick, that's a win this season. If Kenny Pickett could, by the end of the season, if Kenny Pickett throws more touchdowns than interceptions this year, and Najee Harris finds his footing, and you learn something about the offensive line, you learn something about your wide receivers, you decide whether or not you want to keep Chase Claypool, and maybe you see like a guy like Terrell Edmonds and Miles Jack, which I both think have already done this, kind of prove like, hey, we're worthy of new contracts. I think you move forward and you say, like, that's a good year. Like, we did what we needed to do in a rebuild. We got the building blocks. We set a foundation, add a couple of top tier talents next season. Maybe you win a couple more games. And then the year after that, you might be ready to go on a run. Like 2 years, you got a lot of guys that are developed. And I think you just look at it and go, we did enough. They did enough. And I think that right now that's a win to me. If the Steelers could finish out the season with a couple of answers and then have the ability to draft a couple of really top tier guys, I mean, the future looks a lot brighter than it does right now. No doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And just really learn what you need. Just learn what you need. That's like, I think the biggest task is you're likely going to have one of those top tier picks. So figure out what you want to use it on and what you need to use it on.
What you need to use it on. Exactly. Don't be just grabbing. That's the problem with the end of the first round, is you're just getting whoever's there. Nope. Get what you need. Get a quality level talent and what you need. Fill a hole truly for the next 5 years and begin to build on the foundation that they already have. No doubt. All right, guys, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Find us anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, go use our promo code at manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping. I'll be back with a live stream tomorrow on YouTube, and then me and Steven will be back on Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.